Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are brand new, welcome to what I'm calling the Uncaged community. A little bit of wordplay there that I hope you enjoy. This community is really focused on ultimately making your financial situation a lot better, especially now, 2023, 2024, where we should be in accumulation mode. Setting ourselves up as strongly as possible when the bull market swings back around. Everyone's in crypto and finance crazy buying mode, and we're already sat on huge bags on approaching Lamborghini buying season. I'm going to address a topic today that I've seen come up a few times, and that is quite simply Pulsechain versus PulseX. What's the best project? What's going to give us the biggest return and ultimately make us the most money? Now, to me, this is very much like asking Lamborghini versus Ferrari. Both very great products, and you can't go wrong with either. But if we are made to make a comparison between the two, I'm certainly able to give you my 2 cents on how I think things are going to play out. I will, of course, as always, preference this by saying I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research, get a good sense of the landscape and the opposing views before you make any decisions that affect your financial well-being. With that being said, now, for all intensive purposes, we are comparing apples to oranges. We have Pulsechain, obviously a layer 1 solution. We have PulseX, a decentralized exchange. Both have very different unique selling points. Both have very different tokenomics. Now, I will say that in terms of an apples to oranges comparison, this is probably as fair as you're going to get based on the fact that they share the same founder. They share the same very passionate community. And so it's a little bit more fair than it would be otherwise. I will also say this. Now, to anyone looking at this on a surface level, historically speaking, it's a very easy assumption to come to that a layer 1 has traditionally yielded better returns than a DEX. In my opinion, we haven't yet seen a long enough runway in the DEX world to really make that assumption. I think that now, especially as we've seen some of the shit show that's gone on with some of the centralized exchanges. We've seen what happened with FTX. We've seen what's happening with Gemini. I think that going forward, there's going to be a much bigger emphasis on the importance of decentralized exchanges, security, accountability for your own tokens and owning your own tokens, and all of that good stuff that's really going to feed into the narrative over the next bull cycles of just how important these decentralized exchanges are and will be. No longer, I think, is it just going to be the early adopters and those folks who are a little bit more experienced utilizing these DEXs. I think the learning curve for new people onboarding is going to be shortened dramatically. And so that's also going to bring a new dynamic for, future-looking price performance. But right now, I watched a stream with Randy Halasky. If you don't already follow him, please do. He's a good resource in the community, certainly someone that I follow, as well as a lot of others in the community that are doing a lot of good. And, he addressed this very topic. And the way he addressed it, I noticed that he shares, pretty much the same mentality as myself. We know that when the Pulsechain sacrifice took place, we had essentially the hexagons that saw some big returns from Hex. They were the early adopters and reaped the rewards for that within the Hex ecosystem. And so they were the ones who put a lot of confidence into this sacrifice phase, which we hadn't really heard of before. For most of us, it was a big leap of faith. And so convincing ourselves to, jump into an opportunity that was certainly contextualized in a way we weren't familiar with was a pretty risky maneuver. Some of us did. I got involved in the sacrifice. I didn't go as deep or as heavy as I would have liked to, like most of us, I'm sure. But, it really took a leap of faith to get involved. Since then, in between that time and when the PulseX sacrifice took place, that network effect took hold, a lot more excitement around the whole ecosystem, therefore meaning that, many multiples of people got involved in the PulseX sacrifice in comparison to the Pulsechain sacrifice. Now, what this could mean, I think, when looking through the lens of kind of common sense, would be that a lot of the people who got involved in PulseX kind of wish they got involved in Pulsechain also. And so upon launch, many of those, especially during the first 2 days where you really have the opportunity to ratio trade, a lot of people are going to get involved into Pulsechain and reallocate some of their funds that they put into PulseX, and that may inject a lot more into the price performance of Pulsechain out of the gates. Do I think that's necessarily going to have a negative impact on the price performance of PulseX? No. I just think that it's going to certainly inject a bit of a steroid injection to Pulsechain out of the gates. Now, Randy kind of framed this as a turtle and a hare race, which is something that, I definitely agree with. I think that, essentially Pulsechain will be the hare. It'll come out of the gates a lot faster. It has that initial price action driven by that economic kind of energy that's going into it initially. And therefore, we could be looking at a 100 to 200x within the first 90 days, which seems crazy. But I think the first 3-4 months are going to be shocking for a lot of us, let alone what it does further down the line when it comes to, as we reach the bull market and the top of the bull market. PulseX, I still think, has a good chance of doing a 10 to 20x within that first kind of 3-4 month period. At which point, I think that we're going to start to see the impact that buy and burn has. Now, I'm going to assume if you're watching this video, you're already somewhat familiar with the unique selling points and the tokenomics of both projects. I can do another video that addresses this, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that you understand all about the buy and burn with PulseX. I think that as we start seeing more volume on the DEX, that's going to play a much larger role in price performance. We've essentially seeing a continuous buying the price up, and that buy pressure is going to really push the price of PulseX as we start going forward. And I'm talking within the first year, within the first 2 years, certainly in advance of when real bull season comes back around. And so I really do think that PulseX has a very good opportunity to come up past Pulsechain and see some real big impact in just how well that starts performing. Now, as we start going forward, more projects are being built on Pulsechain. It's a layer 1 solution. Hopefully, it's a go-to layer 1 solution for many a developer. That's also going to add some economic energy into Pulsechain. And so past that, year and a half, as we start approaching bull season, I think we're going to see some astronomical returns from both. And like I said before, you can't really go wrong with both. I will also say that, for those of us who want to simplify our strategy as much as possible, you don't have to go into trade mode. You don't have to try to take a gamble initially out of the gates on what you think is going to have the best price performance. For many of us, the smartest decision is simply going to be, if you're already in the sacrifice phase, hold on to whatever bags you have and then dollar cost average whenever you think there's an opportunity going forward. The price may run away from us. It may go through several dips. You never really know on both projects. And so I think that what's proven time and time again is having a longer time horizon in mind. And I don't think you can go wrong. Between now and the height of the bull market, you could be in a position to really change your life if you're just patient and don't start thinking with your emotions and making impulse decisions. Just, if you're stored on a hard wallet, on a cold wallet, or if it's in your MetaMask or wherever you're storing your funds, forget about them for a while. And then, a couple months in, you'll have a lot more data at your disposal to start making intelligent decisions. But I think for the most part, what I'm doing, I'm holding my bags and I'm dollar cost averaging when I think there's opportunities. I do think the longer time goes on, the more irrelevant this initial price action is going to seem. Again, it plays into the narrative of being patient and having that longer term time horizon. There are going to be traders who wreck themselves early on. Don't be one of those. If you don't have full belief in your trading abilities, which most of us don't, and if you do, I think you may be kidding yourself to a certain point. You may have a massive track record in success when it comes to trading. But if you weigh that up to getting involved in solid projects from the get-go and then holding your bags throughout, a multi-year time frame, do you think you're going to do better? Hey, if you think you can, take that risk and go for it. All power to you. But for most of us, simply holding our bags is going to be return enough. I have a huge amount of confidence in both of these, even Hex as well, as we've talked about. But knowing that this video is focusing primarily on Pulse and PulseX, I really do think that initial price action isn't as important as you like to think it is. If you're already in the sacrifices, then again, I would advise holding your bags. If you haven't got into the sacrifices, you have a choice. Now, out of the gates, both Pulse and PulseX, there's many different viewpoints on what's going to be the best investment. Some would argue that PulseX, given the fact that it's not going to have the giant leap forward, potentially initially, maybe that's a good buying opportunity out of the gates, because while you're waiting for Pulsechain to take that inevitable dip, again, nothing's guaranteed, but if it takes that initial dip, a PulseX purchase out of the gates may be a better option for you. And then as some of the months progress and you've continued to try to gain as much dry powder as you can, then look to see price performance on Pulsechain. And if the price hasn't run away and it has taken a dip, like historically lots of these projects have before it starts really heading up come bull market, look to make an intelligent decision then. I would say the first 3-4 months, I wouldn't touch anything. If you're not already involved, maybe you want to take a position and see how things go. But, a bit of patience is going to go a long way. So I hope that's brought some context for some of you. If you have any comments, again, please, I am looking at them. Let me know if there are any topics you want me to focus on videos going forward. But until then, stay tuned. I'm excited to put out more content and touch on new topics that we haven't talked about yet. I'm also putting together an action plan now going in, as we progress with this bear cycle on some of those smaller altcoin projects that I think have a lot of legs, as there are a lot of exciting opportunities upcoming with AI, with the metaverse, and all of that good stuff. So do stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter as well. A lot of my content's going to be obviously pushed through my Twitter channels, but I'm going to be staying as relevant as I can there with any trend topics. So that's maybe a good place to get some initial feedback or some initial pointers right away. And until then, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.